In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodan zoki chodan la jamjo madu dani kyamso chi dangi jinso kibe sonan Drogan
Lama Dravete Banda Bananda Sojang of Najave, Jazagan, the Badamit of the Chong, Bodo, on the book is in the Others are the Nilanda. So I Namonas in a level Namalo, the forward, you know, so which nothing in Chebe Madan de Zaveda, Yugan and the Rogan, Bujan, the Chunijan, the Rosan, the Men of the Munde. Chubudobras in Jello. Jawabando and Dalamadan Ramichi Jabola, Jesus, Satalam, Jerazon, Doje Changi, Pombono, Dojo. We are in the Longchenpa's this teachings text verses I believe so fourth. Okay. So Rangchen do Jin Yen La Chushe Tamke Chimbu Jomi Kojong Munzin Simjim La Jajuju Lona Tonga Kuin Dam means
teaching others Dharma out of a desire for greatness and maintaining a retinue of important and humble people through skillful methods. Mind involved in this is a source of pride. To have few aspirations is my heart advice.
Okay. Okay. Now this is again Longchenpa. We call the Longchenpa. Talking about it is generally speaking teaching to any teachings for for self and others. It is very important. Without really pride and egos and so forth, it is very important. It's not just the teachings, it's just the listening teachings, or receiving teachings, or teaching for other people, or self and others. So it's very, very important as a spiritually practiced point of view. Here, especially mentioned for like myself, like teachers, like anybody. Or it is very important to teaching with rather than egos and selfish, teaching more with the love and compassion, with the kindness, or with the humble, or with the skillful ways. Here saying, skillful teachings is very important. Sometimes we do teaching kind of. Teaching is the most important part is the audience. According to the audience, and have to teach about that, not the oneself. Like myself, for example, I'm not really realization, but for pretending like I am realization person. So I'm teaching my way, everything as my realization. Nothing pay attention to the students, at all. So that doesn't work. And we all been in schools, universities, including myself. That's a lot of happens sometimes. Many professors I can see, I remember it. They're so smart, really, but they don't understand it sometimes. What the students understood or not, So likewise, the Dharma teaching and Dharma practice, whatever, actually has to be a really, really skillful ways, without any or selfish and so on. Those are necessarily. Then they say second word is as a it is important once you if the really practitioner, he or he herself, whoever it is, if they don't have any selfish, and don't want to have any students, but just want to teach, that's all. And then sometimes we have monastery to taking care of monastery and so on. So there has to be a very skillful way to, so those are wonderful. Now that Longchenpa was saying, as a really practitioner, the real practitioner, and those are not so important for them. It brings causes. Sometimes it's true. When it's something then it has a lot of graspings, pride, egos, and so on, So these are, as a real practitioner, those are as much possible to be abandoned, to stay away from those things, It's very important, but it's very, very difficult sometimes, Or sometimes because of as a teacher, sometimes it's attached to students, student attached to the teachers. That's what often happens in reality life. Never ever happens just free, free from inside, emotional. That's quite rare. But the really many very rare, but few teachers and students like that too. And it's not just from the teacher side, student side too. Teacher side also there's a lot attached to certain things there. So many it happens, This causes so much problem, causes especially for the practices. And from the student side to the teachers to teacher, that attachment. Faith, devotion, that's necessarily unconditional, necessarily. But attachments to the teachers and so on, that's not necessary, Or that is a kind of obstacle for the student as a practitioner. So therefore, as a real practitioner, Longchenpa say the last word, or not so kind of, it is teaching actually about the living life as an everyday life, every present moment actually. It's so important. It's not easy, but it is very important. Every day, whatever, just take really advantage, use this precious time rather than worry about the futures, rather than worry about the past and so on. So there's a real practitioner, they are always short-term thinking about the present moment only, because they are so only fully realize the impermanence nature. Because for like me, not realize there's so many things, But those who are really great teachers, they are always realizing nature of impermanence. So they have no so much long plans to, they every day appreciate. So living in a present life is so important. That's not easy, very not easy. Any time that the practitioner is true, to be living like a person, So that is the Longchenpa. Generally, is speaking, to my understanding, is speaking about the practitioner, those who really true practitioner must be this the fourth line, the paragraph is so. I mean, everyone is important, but this is really hard to practice. Actually, really not easy. So that is talking about it. So let me stop here. Anybody else take your thoughts?
Thank you, Lama. Richard, would you like to share first?
Yes, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Lama. Yeah, a few things came to mind based on the passage and based on Lama Gursam's comments. He mentioned the audience, and for the past 2 summers, I've taken a course that was taught online by a Theravadan monk out of Australia, Ajahn Sumedho. And it has been very interesting. What he does is he takes original discourses by the Buddha, and his focus is on how the Buddha so flexibly adapted his teachings to the audiences that he was speaking to. In other words, it wasn't about him per se, it was about meeting the needs of the practitioners, of the everyday people. And, of course, those audiences varied from everyday skilled workers who maybe weren't even literate to highly educated Brahmins. And the Buddha had a gift, of course, in our tradition, we might refer to it as upaya, of adapting his teachings to meet the need of the audience. So I was reminded of Ajahn Sumedho's interesting course and how he really looked at the historical context of the audiences that the Buddha spoke to. The second thing that came to mind was, Lama, your comments about professors. I work in a university. I'll be retiring within the next 2 years, but unfortunately, I do have colleagues who are, and maybe this is, I hope I'm not being judgmental here, but they really are only interested into teaching the most, if you will, the most talented and the best prepared students. Like they'll teach to the top 25% of their class, and then they're very dismissive about maybe how the other students are performing. And the perspective that I've tried to share is, and I happen to be teaching at a state university in New Haven, Connecticut, where many of our students come out of school districts where they don't have a strong foundational skills. They're the first generation in their family, maybe even to go to college. And interestingly, on the other side of New Haven, we have Yale University, which is, of course, a very prestigious school with students that have had many, many privileges in their lives. So my attitude has always been, particularly when I'm mentoring younger faculty members, anybody can teach to that top 25 or 50%. To me, the most effective instructor is the one who could reach those students who don't come in as well prepared. And we shouldn't be dismissive of anyone. So that comment struck a chord with me. And then finally, when I read this verse, even before we met tonight, I sadly, I hate to go here, but I'm reminded of how many teachers in the Western Buddhist community have exploited their power and crossed boundaries in unskillful ways. And I think often in those cases, what those teachers might be, at least I've imagined, in it for the wrong reasons. They're not in it, as Lama said, primarily out of love and compassion and wanting to share the Dharma. But maybe unconsciously, their egos are puffed up by being in the position of teacher or whatever. And for that reason, they lose sight of their ethics and their virtuous qualities. And a lot of harm has been done in sanghas, precisely because of the pride of teachers who don't do the introspection, that inner work of looking at what their motivations are. So I hope I haven't spoken too much. I'm aware we're a small group tonight, so bowing out.
Thank you, Richard. That was very good comments. Katie, do you have anything you'd like to bring up or add?
I appreciate what Richard had to say about, I think there's something that we recognize in our teachers. If they're good, we tend to know that to a certain degree, and if they're not, that will come to light. And I guess from the perspective of a student, there's this continual investigation process, because as we've learned in the Dharma, like, there's that 4-line saying, don't rely on the teacher, rely on the teaching. Don't rely on the words, rely on the meaning, and so on. And so as we get to know people and as we're thinking about the Dharma, right now Lama and I are participating in this very beautiful ceremony in Nepal. It's going to be for the next few months. And one of the things that Sangha Rinpoche was telling us was that we really need to look at this world in a pure way, and at our siblings, the people that we're attending this teaching with, as Vajra brothers and sisters. And so on the one hand, of course, we have to have a pure view of our world and of the people in it. And so in one sense, any human being, any being that I encounter, if I look at them as my teacher, as my Vajra brother or Vajra sister, whether they're sitting on a throne or whether they are, shining shoes on the corner, that's a perspective that we can work towards adopting. And whatever their behavior, we have to learn how to incorporate that into our Dharma. And that comes back again, I think, to that part about don't rely on the teacher, rely on the teaching. Don't rely on the words, rely on the meaning. Don't rely on the provisional meaning, rely on the ultimate meaning. And then the last one, I think, is about wisdom and consciousness or something. But
rely on the wisdom.
Rely on the wisdom, not on the consciousness. There's another English translation for that as well, that last line. But, so, yeah, as it relates to this passage, from the perspective of a student, whether or not a teacher is doing it for greatness or whatever, how I show up, I guess, is where I sit with it, and maybe it's also about having compassion for wherever anyone is at, while not giving myself over to someone or some group or some organization blindly, kind of having open eyes about whatever might be going on. So I guess that's the wisdom part of it, that two sides of the coin. Okay, I'm done. Yeah.
I just thought of, you know, more in a regular context, because I find people don't, you know, really, if you're trying to give advice to people or even just comfort them or help them with their life challenges or anything you're involved with or work, I've found that when you know, I take sort of if I come across as like a know-it-all, or if I'm sort of preaching or being you know, prideful about it, as if I know something or I'm better than whoever it is that I'm, you know, conversing with, I find that it really does affect the quality and the amount of benefit, and I often feel, you know, when I catch myself you know, doing that sometimes, it does make me really feel more humble about having a deeper motivation and not, you know, as Richard was saying, not ignoring people that aren't as maybe prepared or intellectual or as versed in something, or you know, and really just trying to speak plainly and helpfully. I find that's, you know, in our day and age, there's so much technical jargon and so much political, you know, the connotations of things, and it's, you know, even just trying to talk about enlightenment or with, you know, it's so, I feel like English is so clumsy and um, you know, sometimes easy to misunderstand, that I find that even though I do like to share and talk and discuss things a lot, I've been feeling much more humble and silent, you know, seeing the benefit of just, you know, being quieter about what I may or may not know, unless I can really help someone, you know. That's sort of how it comes across to me.
Okay, so Lama and I discussed having a shorter session today. For getting to some to see a teacher who we're doing some teachings with.
We have 2 minutes.
If you want to do a half-hour session, you have like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So we may have 5 more minutes. So so we have actually, Katie mentioned this, which we right now receiving teaching is quite a bit tense. The patience is not only working, so we have a lot of early to go. We are leaving from there. It's a little bit far. Just working for maybe 40 minutes of walking distance to walk there, to reach there, and then it's a lot of crowded. So, but just letting you know. Then other things I put here to share with you from my personal thinking about what should I, as myself, take this advice or the teaching from this Longchenpa, you know. I think it's well, as myself, as a teacher, we have to, I really think about the balance part is so important. Teacher, my life self, always teaching is so tiring, you know. It brings sometimes so much ego and so much, too much focus into the intellectuals, you know, and never ever done in the practices. So that is quite a bit of challenge. Personally speaking, is really danger too, really. Like I get some intellectual understanding, but I don't have a time for really practice myself. in order to prepare to teach. Not the preparing teaching is many ways to do it, right? Of course, as intellectual studies, books, and things like that. Not just that, and then the practicing sometimes as a spiritually teachings like the Dharma. It has to be have a really, really prepared well as a meditation. Like I proud of. Now these days I always prepare. Whenever I go teaching, I have to at least before teaching, I just meditate. Try to what the subject I'm talking, whatever. I try to think and meditate. I just try to observe, and then I can speak in. I have some limit understanding of intellectual and try to combine with these practices together. So that will be really, really useful for I notice myself too. If I'm not practice preparation, it's quite become as early. Of course, Katie mentioned about this Buddha's teaching about, most of the relying on the word, not in the meanings, not relying on the person, relying on the teachings and so on, the teachings of the Buddha, which is very profound. So that's what I thought, really. The kind of balance is so important, Even though if we have sometimes university teaching is different, right? So we have to teach. There's no time for meditate. There's a different way there. Schedule has to go with that. Myself as a spiritual teacher and going to the different groups and center. So then I try to make that available, teaching at the same times, less time for practice together. So that's why I found it very useful for the student, useful for myself too. To whatever I taught to share, and then let's sit down and meditate. Let's observe. Let's think. Then after that, third one is so important. QA. It's always important, really. Not too much. Sometimes in the West, a little bit we have to control. I know it's kind of challenge. Sometimes we're going over QA sometimes too much. Then it is challenges there. Whatever it is needed mindfully, QA time is necessary actually, in order to really understand it better. So, whatever subjects and practices is important. So those three things is very important. I really think about sometimes. Teaching itself, then practice self-time, then time for the Q&A, certain let's open their thoughts. And, some people have questions there to try to answer, try to exchange their thoughts, Answer can be anything is possible sometimes, as not necessarily always have to be an answer. There's certain times there's no answer. It has to be individual has to practice to understand it or whatever. The answer have to find from within oneself. It sometimes happens, So therefore, that's what I think here, So then it helps a little bit to, support self as a teacher. Try to understand it really inside more, rather than just intellectual. So and also have supports to the students too, But kind of needed a balance really is important. So what I mean is we have to think which way we have to go, So that's all. So we have to now stop. We have to leave. So and next week see you again. Hopefully again. Let's do the short dedication prayer. So please, thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Lama.
Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Shantu Sancho Rinpoche Maki Panam Gegyoche Epa Nyamba Mepaya Gongme Gongdu Kawarsho.
Okay, take care. Good evening or good night.